The Linguaverse episode 23, The Language of Healing Words That Mend. Welcome back to the Linguaverse. If you've followed our journey so far, you'll know we've walked through language as spell, as system, as symbol, and as song. We've explored words that enchant, words that build, words that fracture. But here, we pause and turn toward the words that mend. Because before language became a tool of persuasion or power, it was something simpler, a way to soothe, to name pain, to connect through tenderness. Long before written alphabets, the earliest human exchanges, soft murmurs, humming, lullabies, were acts of care. Language didn't just describe the world, it cradled it. In this episode, we'll explore how words can heal, not metaphorically alone, but physiologically, neurologically, and spiritually. We'll trace how narrative medicine allows patients to become authors of their own recovery. We'll examine how reframing, the act of changing linguistic structure, reshapes perception, emotion, and even immune response. We'll see how metaphor works like a bridge between the brain and the body, translating raw sensation into meaning. We'll enter the worlds of ritual chant, affirmation, and suggestion, discovering how ancient vocal practices anticipated modern neuroscience. And we'll question whether words, when spoken in coherence, resonance, and love, can realign not just the psyche, but the flesh itself. We often underestimate language's subtle pharmacology. When a doctor says, "You're healing well," cortisol drops. When a loved one whispers, "I'm here," the heart rate slows. When we repeat, "I forgive you," or "I forgive myself," neural pathways rewire. Our bodies are listening, always. Every word we speak is a chemical message. Across my own journey, I've witnessed how language, when reclaimed consciously, becomes a medicine cabinet. Each phrase is a tincture, each silence a salve. But before we leap into prescriptions or affirmations, we need to understand the wound, not just what happened, but how it was encoded in words. Because every trauma carries its own grammar, every scar a syntax, and every recovery a rewrite. With the wound, with the moment language failed us, or worse, betrayed us, and how, through patience and presence, it can be restored. Let's begin the grammar of the wound. There's a strange irony in healing. To mend what language once broke, we must return to the scene of the sentence. Think about it. How many of your deepest injuries came not from accidents or illnesses, but from words? A parent's, "What's wrong with you?" A teacher's, "You'll never make it." A partner's, "You're too much." These phrases, small in sound but heavy in consequence, often become the syntax of our self-concept. They don't just echo in memory, they program identity. Psychologists call this linguistic encoding, the way the nervous system binds verbal messages to emotional states. A cutting remark doesn't stay abstract. It embeds in muscle tension, breathing patterns, and posture. The body becomes a manuscript of unspoken pain. When I began exploring this in The Body Knows, I realized how grammar can mirror nervous system states. Sentences of defeat, "I can't," "I never," "I always," are often accompanied by collapsed shoulders and shallow breath. Phrases of expansion, "I'm learning," "I'm ready," "I choose," open the chest, elongate the spine. Language isn't just symbolic, it's somatic. Modern neuroscience supports this. Studies on psychoneuroimmunology reveal that verbal suggestion, even mild reframing, alters physiological markers like heart rate variability and inflammatory cytokines. In other words, the stories we tell shape cellular behavior. But to rewrite, we must first read. And that requires compassion for the author we once were. When I reflect on my own path, years of internalized shame, misunderstood neurodivergence, and emotional repression, I can see how every misdiagnosis, every label, every careless word became part of a grammar of limitation. Autism, ADHD, bipolar, not identities I reject, but frameworks that at times became cages, scripts I was told to follow, rather than languages I could evolve. Healing began when I realized I don't have to speak in the voice that hurt me. I can learn a new dialect, one of truth, patience, and reclamation. That's the heart of what I call the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, the idea that words mirror internal states, and that by adjusting one, we adjust the other. It's not magic. It's neurophysiology. A calm phrase cues a calm breath. A compassionate metaphor recruits empathy circuits. A declarative, "I am healing," engages predictive coding toward coherence. This is why narrative medicine is so powerful. In clinical settings, patients who retell their story, not as passive victims, but as active narrators, show improved recovery rates. The act of narrating restores agency. Grammar becomes geometry. The sentence reassembles the self. The sentence as scar, let's look closer. Every wound carries a verb. Something done, something lost. Every wound has a subject, who acted or who failed to. And every wound hides an object, the part of self that absorbed the blow. When those elements remain unarticulated, the psyche loops. We reenact, repeat, and re-trigger because the syntax is unfinished. To heal, we must close the sentence, not with denial, but with punctuation. A full stop that says, "It happened. I survived. I'm rewriting now." But closure doesn't mean silence. It means evolution, shifting from declarative pain to exploratory possibility. From "I was hurt" to "I'm learning how that shaped me." From "they ruined me" to "I'm reclaiming what's mine." This is reparative grammar, a linguistic counterpart to somatic repair. It's what trauma therapists like Bessel van der Kolk describe when they say, the body keeps the score. Yes, but so does the language. And just as muscles relearn safety, speech can relearn sincerity. When we speak differently, we breathe differently. When we breathe differently, we feel differently. And when feeling shifts, behavior follows. Healing, then, is less about erasing the past and more about revising the manuscript, reading it with mercy, annotating the margins with new metaphors. Personal reflection, when my words turned against me. There were times in my life when my own vocabulary betrayed me. During depressive spirals, I would speak in absolutes. Always, never, nothing, everything. Words that left no room for nuance, no aperture for light. They weren't lies, they were echoes of constriction, my body's plea written as a verdict. Later, during moments of awakening, I noticed how silence began to heal what sentences had severed. Sitting in meditation, no word could encapsulate what opened, yet I could feel language rearranging inside me. The old vocabulary of suffering dissolved, replaced by quieter phrases. It's okay. You're safe. Breathe. It wasn't affirmation as performance, it was resonance as truth. The words weren't forced. They were remembered. I realized then, healing language isn't about positivity, it's about precision. Saying exactly what's real, no more, no less. The nervous system recognizes sincerity. Over time, I began experimenting with reframes. Instead of I'm broken, I'd try I'm rebuilding. Instead of I can't cope, I'd whisper, I need rest. Each shift, small as it seemed, changed posture, breath, and feeling. The sentences softened, the self followed. Reflection prompt. Take a quiet moment after this segment. Think of a time when someone's words or your own landed like a blow. Don't rush to forgive or reinterpret. Simply recall the sentence, its exact phrasing, tone, and timing. Now ask yourself, what did those words do to your body? Where did you feel the tension or collapse? How long did it take before you could name what happened? Then reverse the exercise. Recall a time a single word, said softly or unexpectedly, brought relief, a kindness, a truth, a simple I see you. Notice the symmetry, the same instrument that wounds can soothe, depending on the intention and attunement behind it. Write both sentences down, the one that hurt and the one that healed, and look at them side by side. Ask, what grammar does my heart now trust? That's where your healing language begins. Activity, translating the wound one. Identify a phrase you often say when in distress, something automatic. Examples, I can't handle this, I'm falling apart, it's always on me. 3. Reframe it using 3 variations. 5. Finally, reflect. How did the language of the wound encode your past conditioning? What happens when grammar becomes gentler? 2. Write it down, then trace how your body responds as you read it aloud. Notice posture, breath, and tone. A descriptive version, I feel overwhelmed right now. A curious version, what is my body asking for? A compassionate version, I'm allowed to rest when it's too much. 4. Read each aloud slowly. Feel the difference. Which one loosens your breath? Which one invites care rather than contraction? This simple exercise demonstrates MLH in action. Words mirror internal states, and internal states mirror words. When we adjust phrasing, the nervous system follows, not through magic, but through mirror alignment. Next, we'll move deeper into this process, exploring the language of reframing, where perspective itself becomes medicine, and new syntax builds new sight. Because sometimes healing doesn't require new facts, only new sentences. The language of reframing, if part 1 revealed how words can wound and mend flesh, part 2 explores how they reshape reality itself. Reframing is one of the most profound linguistic acts we can perform, a kind of gentle alchemy of perception. It's not denial, it's transformation. It's the art of turning a bruise into a map, of saying I survived instead of I'm ruined, of discovering, in the same set of circumstances, a different grammar of meaning. Reframing isn't simply a psychological trick, it's linguistic craftsmanship. To reframe is to recompose the sentence of selfhood, to choose a different metaphor, a different tense, a different subject. Because language, as we've seen throughout the Linguaverse, doesn't just describe the world, it builds the frameworks through which we perceive and inhabit it. When we shift a single phrase, we aren't merely swapping words. We're teaching our nervous system a new story. We're altering what safety feels like. We're transforming narrative from a closed loop of suffering into an open arc of becoming. Linguistic alchemy. Changing the frame, changing the field. Cognitive linguistics, particularly the work of George Lakoff and Mark Johnson, gave us a powerful insight. Metaphor is not just literary, it's conceptual. We think in metaphors. We don't simply use them to decorate ideas. We use them to understand reality. When you describe depression as a dark cloud, you're invoking vision and weather as frameworks. When you say, I'm carrying too much, you invoke weight and burden. When you say, I'm stuck, you activate motion. These aren't just expressions, they're embodied models. Neuroscientific studies using fMRI have shown that when we hear metaphors of movement or sensation, corresponding regions of the motor or sensory cortex light up. In other words, your brain lives the metaphor. So if your metaphors are rigid, hostile, or despairing, your nervous system mirrors that rigidity. But if you change the metaphor even slightly, you create new neural and emotional possibilities. Try it. I'm broken to I'm rebuilding. I'm lost to I'm exploring. I'm behind to I'm pacing myself. Each shift creates a physiological shift. Your shoulders soften, your breath slows. The sentence becomes a space you can live inside. That's linguistic alchemy, taking the same leaden experience and through conscious speech, refining it into something gold. The grammar of possibility reframing isn't just about metaphor, it's also about grammar. The tense we use carries an emotional charge. I was a failure roots identity in the past. I am failing traps it in the present. I'm learning transforms it into evolution. In narrative therapy, pioneered by Michael White and David Epstein, this principle is central. They viewed identity not as a fixed entity, but as a story under constant revision. When clients externalize problems, shifting from I am broken to I'm struggling with something, they move from identity fusion to flexible authorship. Grammar gives us levers of agency. The progressive aspect, I'm learning, I'm healing, honors process rather than perfection. The modal verbs, I can, I might, I will, open futures rather than sealing fate. The reflexive voice, I'm teaching myself, I'm discovering, restores ownership. These micro shifts don't just polish language, they retrain the nervous system to expect possibility. When I began reframing my own inner dialogue, I noticed something subtle. As my syntax softened, so did my physiology. My heartbeat slowed when I said, I'm learning patience instead of I'm so impatient. My breath deepened when I used becoming instead of failing. It wasn't a placebo, it was alignment nervous system language NSL in action. Our bodies crave congruence. When words affirm movement rather than entrapment, the system recognizes truth and relaxes. Reframing illness, the symptom as messenger. One of the most radical reframes is to view illness not as punishment, but as communication. This doesn't mean romanticizing pain or rejecting medical support. It means listening before silencing. In narrative medicine, clinicians encourage patients to tell their illness stories in their own words. Often, metaphors reveal emotional truths hidden in the body. Someone describing a weight on my chest may be carrying grief. Someone feeling burnt out might be signaling a need for rest and reorientation. Language becomes a diagnostic tool not just for doctors, but for ourselves. If we say my heart aches, the task is not merely analgesic, it's introspective. What is my heart aching for? Through NSL, we can engage this dialogue gently. Slow phrasing, regulated breath, and compassionate tone allow us to converse with symptoms as signals, not enemies. A migraine might say, you've ignored your vision. Fatigue might whisper, you've been carrying too many unfinished stories. These are metaphors, yes, but metaphors with medicine inside. Reframing and the nervous system language, NSL, approach we've explored throughout this series reminds us that words cue states. Fast, clipped sentences trigger urgency. Slow, spacious phrasing invites calm. When reframing, tone is as vital as vocabulary. To say I'm healing in a rushed, tense voice sends mixed signals. To speak it slowly, aligning breath and rhythm, gives the nervous system permission to believe it. This is why mantras and affirmations, often dismissed as woo work, they are felt, not forced. Their power lies not in magical syllables, but in somatic sincerity. The body knows when language rings true. So reframing is a two-step dance. 1. Linguistic, choosing words that open the meaning. 2. Physiological, delivering them in a tone that opens safety. Together, they form coherence, the felt sense of truth that anchors healing. Personal reflection. Finding a new frame for years, I describe my journey with mental health through deficit. I'm struggling, I'm broken, I can't cope. Each phrase was accurate, but imprisoning. Over time, through study, writing, and self-work, I realized those sentences carried a hidden assumption that struggle was identity, not experience. As I delved into the Linguistics and my collective projects, I began to see healing not as erasure, but integration. The frame shifted from pathology to process, from I'm ill to I'm remembering wholeness. That single linguistic pivot restored agency. It didn't erase difficulty, but it refracted it. Pain became part of a mosaic, not a monolith. When I now encounter turbulence, emotional, relational, or existential, I ask, what sentence am I living inside? If the sentence is a cage, I start rewriting. Because reframing isn't about lying to yourself. It's about telling the truth in a way your soul can survive it. Reflection prompt. Take a moment. Which metaphors define your current season of healing? Are you rebuilding, blooming, molting, navigating, resting, or learning to breathe again? Notice which image softens your body, which word invites patience. The metaphor you choose is the medicine you take. Activity. Rewrite a self-story in present progressive 1. Write down a phrase that feels heavy or fixed, e.g., I'm broken, I always fail, I can't trust anyone. 2. Gently rework it into the present progressive honoring movement. I'm rebuilding trust. I'm learning boundaries. I'm discovering my strength. 3. Read both versions aloud. 4. Notice your breath, posture, tone. Which version allows your body to expand? The nervous system responds not to slogans but to sincerity. Choose the phrasing that feels like space. Ritual, chant, and sacred speech, the medicine of repetition. If reframing is linguistic alchemy, ritual is linguistic embodiment, the art of turning language into a rhythm the body can inhabit. Words in ritual are not explanations, they are actions. They are speech that does, not speech that says. From the earliest dawns of civilization, healing has never been purely clinical. It has been ceremonial. Long before hospitals, we gathered around fires, in temples, under stars, chanting syllables that mirrored heartbeats, invoking gods, ancestors, or simply the strength within. Across every culture, the pattern repeats. Words, rhythm, breath, presence, spoken together to synchronize bodies, soothe fear, and remind the sick that they are not alone. Modern science is catching up to what ritual healers, monks, shamans, and poets have known for millennia. The body believes what it repeats. Repetition regulates, rhythm repairs. When the nervous system is overwhelmed by chaos, predictable sound restores coherence. This is the linguistic heartbeat of healing. The origins of sacred sound anthropologists trace ritual speech to the moment language became rhythmic. In early societies, chants were the first collective tools for entrainment, aligning breath, heartbeat, and movement. The Vedas of ancient India, the Psalms of the Hebrew tradition, the Dhikr of Sufi mystics, the Gregorian chants of medieval Europe all share a common grammar: repetition, tone, breath, and reverence. Their aim was not persuasion but resonance, to tune consciousness toward order. The repeated phrase worked as a mantra, derived from manas, mind, and tra, tool or instrument, literally, a tool of thought. In this way, sacred language was always functional, designed to move energy, focus attention, and bridge realms. Even in traditions where words were forbidden or ineffable, Taoism's the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Silence became a ritual utterance in itself. The absence of sound shaped presence as much as its abundance. Chant as regulation. Modern neuroscience gives us fresh eyes for this ancient practice. Studies in psychophysiology show that repetitive vocalization, whether humming, chanting, or slow reading, activates the vagus nerve, increasing parasympathetic tone. In simple terms, chanting slows the heart rate, lowers cortisol, and restores vagal balance, the biological counterpart to emotional calm. A 2016 study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that participants engaging in chanting displayed increased activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and increased connectivity between regions linked to self-awareness and empathy. This is NSL in motion, speech as regulation. When we chant, we literally reprogram our physiology. The word becomes the breath, becomes the state. It's why monks chant daily, why hymns calm the grieving, why even secular rituals, football crowds, protest marches, and birthday songs carry healing power. They entrain nervous systems into coherence. To chant is to breathe together, and to breathe together is to heal together. Ritual as repetition with reverence, but ritual is more than repetition. It's repetition with meaning. Without meaning, repetition is compulsion. With meaning, it becomes consecration. When you light a candle, speak an affirmation, or say grace, you're not performing superstition. You're marking a moment. Ritual transforms time into sacred space. It creates an architecture of intention within which healing can unfold. In trauma recovery, ritual gives the body predictability, a safe loop that replaces the chaos of flashbacks. Survivors often design personal rituals, lighting incense before journaling, using the same mug each morning, saying a phrase of gratitude before sleep. Each act whispers, "You are safe now." This is linguistic therapy through rhythm and structure. The body learns safety through reliable patterns. The mind follows. The spell of the name. In many indigenous traditions, healing begins with naming, not diagnosis, but invocation. Among the Navajo, healing ceremonies use complex chants, blessing way, night way, in which each verse restores harmony, hozo, by naming the parts of the world in right relation. The healer doesn't banish illness through force, but restores the song of balance. Every word is a step toward remembering wholeness. Similarly, in Egyptian Heka, words were not symbols of power, they were power. To name was to activate. Healing was not applied, it was spoken into being. This echoes through modern psychology. To name an emotion, I feel grief, reduces amygdala activation and increases prefrontal regulation. Name it to tame it is a clinical echo of ancient incantation. In all cases, naming is not mere labeling. It's a form of recognition, the first gesture of healing. Water, rhythm, and resonance consider how sound and water interact. Modern experiments by Masaru Emoto, though controversial in methodology, captured something intuitive: vibration shapes matter. In cymatics, visible on a Chladni plate, frequencies organize particles into geometric patterns. The higher the coherence, the more intricate the design. Our bodies, composed largely of water, are shaped by vibration. When we chant, we sculpt internal landscapes. Ancient healers didn't have oscilloscopes, they had feeling. They knew the voice could carve calm into chaos. When you whisper gently to a child, hum to yourself in grief, or sing softly to a plant, you're using this same principle. The voice is a tuning fork for the soul. MLH in ritual context, the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, helps explain why ritual language feels so potent. When we speak in synchrony, chanting together, singing hymns, and praying aloud, our mirror neurons fire in resonance with others. We don't just hear words, we feel their intention mirrored back. Each participant becomes both speaker and listener, sender and receiver. In communal chant, meaning is carried less by semantics than by shared embodiment. The mirror circuit becomes a field of coherence. Intention spreads like light through prisms, each voice refracting the same vow. Thus, ritual heals not because of doctrine, but because of mirrored resonance. The body recognizes itself in the other. The I dissolves into we, reframing ritual. From obedience to participation in modernity, ritual often carries baggage associated with dogma, empty repetition. But healing rituals differ. They are participatory, not prescriptive. They ask not for submission, but presence. They invite co-creation, not control. To reclaim ritual is to remember that sacred speech was never about domination. It was about orientation, turning language back toward life. In your own practice, ritual need not be religious. It can be secular, poetic, or embodied, lighting a candle before creative work, saying a phrase of release when closing your laptop, placing a hand on your heart when anxious and whispering, I'm here. Each gesture teaches the body a new grammar of safety. The neuroscience of sacred speech contemporary studies in neurotheology and psychoneuroimmunology show that contemplative chanting and prayer alter both brain and immune function. Research from the Benson Henry Institute at Harvard found that repetitive prayer or mantra meditation produced a relaxation response, reducing blood pressure, heart rate, and inflammation markers. Meanwhile, studies of curtain devotional singing show increased oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and elevated heart rate variability, a sign of nervous system flexibility. In short, sacred repetition is medicine. Even secular affirmations, when sincere and rhythmic, can stimulate similar effects. The key is embodied emotion, belief not as dogma, but as felt coherence. Reflection prompt. What phrases, songs, or sounds bring your body into calm? What daily rituals remind you that healing isn't a destination, but a rhythm? Reflect on one pattern: morning tea, evening silence, a song you hum and ask, what meaning does this repetition carry? If it feels nourishing, make it sacred. Activity. Craft a healing chant. 1. Identify a phrase or quality you wish to embody, e.g. peace, courage, rest. 2. Compose a simple line of 3-5 words, rhythmic, memorable. I breathe in peace. I walk in light. 3. Repeat it softly for 1 minute, aligning speech and breath. 4. Notice, how does your body respond? Does tension ease, attention settle, warmth rise? This is ritual speech in miniature, a daily recalibration of word, breath, and being. Ritual, chant, and sacred speech remind us that healing is not only in language but through it, when words cease to describe and begin to resonate. Repetition with reverence reteaches the nervous system what trust feels like. And in every chant, prayer, hum, and whispered vow, we rediscover the ancient grammar of grace, breath meeting breath, word becoming world, science, suggestion, and the biology of belief. When we speak, the air changes, not only metaphorically, but also physiologically. Each word you hear is a cascade of neurochemical responses, an invisible pharmacology. The body listens long before the conscious mind interprets. The invisible pharmacology of words: a gentle tone can lower cortisol. A harsh phrase can spike adrenaline. An unexpected diagnosis can constrict the chest, while a reassuring voice can release breath you didn't know you were holding. This is the biology of belief, the way expectation, imagination, and emotion shape the chemical symphony inside us. The body, it turns out, is not a passive object waiting to be fixed. It is a living mirror of meaning. Every story we tell, every word we repeat is a kind of molecular spell. Hypnosis and suggestion. The architecture of expectancy hypnosis has long been misunderstood as mind control or theatrics, but at its core, it is language that bypasses defense. Milton Erickson, the father of modern hypnotherapy, described hypnosis not as sleep, but as focused attention plus receptivity. When a suggestion lands in a relaxed, trusting nervous system, it alters perception, sensation, and even immune response. In clinical contexts, hypnotic suggestion has reduced chronic pain, accelerated wound healing, and modulated immune markers. A 2000 study in The Lancet found that surgical patients receiving hypnotic preparation required less anesthetic and reported lower postoperative pain. How? Through expectancy, the most potent ingredient in all suggestion. The brain does not distinguish strongly between vividly imagined experience and lived reality. Language creates expectation. Expectation creates physiology. Say to yourself, this injection will hurt, and pain pathways flare. Say, this will bring healing, and the same neurons soften. The lesson is not delusion but direction. The mind follows what it's told. The body follows what the mind believes. Psycholinguistics. The semantics of sensation psycholinguistics explores how language shapes thought and emotion. One crucial mechanism is semantic priming, the way exposure to a word influences perception of subsequent experience. For example, if you hear warmth repeatedly, you are more likely to interpret a neutral touch as pleasant. If you hear danger, your body may tense before any threat appears. In clinical care, framing bias, how information is phrased, deeply affects patient outcomes. Consider, you have a 90% chance of recovery versus there's a 10% chance it won't work. Both are statistically identical, yet the emotional trajectory they trigger differs entirely. Neuroimaging studies show that positive framing activates reward circuits, while negative framing stimulates stress responses. Words, then, are not neutral carriers. They are cognitive steering wheels. In healing, how we phrase the possible becomes part of the prognosis. The grammar of hope expectancy as medicine. The physician Bernard Lone once wrote, "Words are the most powerful drug known to humanity." Every clinical encounter, every conversation with a healer carries a grammar of hope or harm. The sentence, "there's nothing we can do," shuts a door not only in the mind but in the immune system. It signals helplessness, constriction, and finality. In contrast, "there's always something we can try," opens cognitive and cellular pathways, priming dopaminergic reward systems that motivate healing behaviors and resilience. The expectancy effect is not placebo trickery, it's biological participation. When the mind anticipates relief, the body rehearses it, releasing endorphins, modulating inflammation, and increasing nitric oxide in microvasculature. Hope, in biochemical terms, is vasodilation. Despair is constriction. We are vessels shaped by syntax. Placebo, the performance of belief. The placebo effect, often dismissed as an illusion, is in truth the most dramatic evidence of meaning as medicine. Administer a sugar pill with convincing authority, and symptoms can diminish, pain can ease, and ulcers can heal. Give the same pill with skepticism, and it loses potency. Harvard's program in placebo studies, led by Ted Kapchuk, has shown even open-label placebos, where patients are told they're receiving an inert pill, can produce real physiological improvement. The crucial ingredient is contextual meaning, ritual, trust, care, tone. The pill is theatre, the healing is belief embodied. To call a placebo fake is to misunderstand its essence. It is the body's rehearsal of faith, a neurochemical simulation that becomes real through repetition. Every doctor's voice, every healer's gaze, every reassuring phrase is part of this performance. Meaning, not molecule, is the first medicine. Language and dopamine, rewarding renewal affirmations, often mocked as self-help cliché, are potent when aligned with embodiment. Neuroscience shows self-referential positive language activates the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and striatal dopaminergic pathways, the same regions stimulated by reward anticipation. In simple terms, saying, "I am healing," and feeling it can release the same neurochemistry as receiving a gift or achieving a goal. But sincerity matters. Empty affirmations clash with felt reality and can trigger cognitive dissonance. The nervous system knows when words are hollow. Thus, healing speech must be truth-adjacent, close enough to be believable, aspirational enough to be guiding. "I am broken in prisons. I am healing" invites movement. "I am learning to heal" harmonizes truth and hope. The mirror neuron system, central to MLH, echoes this. The brain simulates each phrase as if it were already enacted. Words rehearse states. Rehearsal rewires circuits. Each sincere sentence is a dopaminergic breadcrumb, leading body and mind back toward vitality. Tone as medicine, the healing voice. In clinics, the most powerful variable often isn't treatment, but tone. The same diagnosis spoken gently or coldly can alter immune markers, adherence, and mood. A 2019 study in patient education and counseling found that empathetic language during consultations reduced patient anxiety and increased satisfaction more than additional medical detail. Tone, pace, and rhythm cue nervous system states. A hurried voice signals danger, a warm one signals safety. Healers, whether doctors, therapists, or friends, transmit more than data. They transmit regulation. A compassionate phrase, "you're doing everything you can normalize stress hormones. A blunt phrase, "you're failing to improve," can prolong inflammation. Language is bedside manner. Bedside manner is biochemistry. Ethical healing language. Truth with tenderness. In the desire to comfort, some healers offer false hope. In fear of liability, others offer none. The art is ethical communication, clarity without cruelty, optimism without illusion. True healing language is not about promising miracles, but preserving agency. It says, "Here is what we know, here is what we can try, and here is how I'll walk with you." Such phrasing acknowledges limits without withdrawing warmth. It sustains connection, which is itself curative. Ethical speech in medicine mirrors NSL's principle, safety through coherence. When words align with body and breath, trust forms. When they fracture, contradiction, condescension, confusion, trust collapses. Every syllable carries moral weight. Personal insight, doctors, healers, and the tone of trust. I remember vividly the difference between two voices, one clinical, one compassionate. When I was younger, I'd seen doctors who spoke like diagnosticians, precise, detached, factual. Their words landed like cold metal. It might be chronic. You'll have to live with it. We'll see. Even if accurate, their tone drained vitality. The body heard resignation. Years later, a healer spoke differently, not with denial, but with depth. She said, "Your body isn't broken, it's speaking. Let's listen." That sentence changed everything. It reframed illness as communication, not punishment. My breath deepened. My muscles softened. Something in me, call it spirit, call it parasympathetic shift, exhaled. Since then, I've learned to hear the medicine inside intonation. Some words cut, others cradle. The healer's power isn't only in knowledge, but in presence. Reflection prompt. Think back to a moment when professional words from a doctor, teacher, mentor, or therapist shaped your body's trust. What phrase lingered after the appointment? Did your breath expand or constrict? Did you leave with more agency or less? Now ask, what language would have felt healing instead? Write that sentence, speak it aloud, feel the shift. Activity. Write your own healing script. Create 5 sentences your cells need to hear, not your ego, not your critics, not your future self. Your cells. Let them be simple, rhythmic, believable. Begin each with I am or my body is one. I'm learning safety. 2. My body remembers balance. 3. I am allowed to rest. 4. My breath builds trust. 5. I heal in honest rhythm. Read them slowly one by one. Place a hand on your chest or belly. Let breath follow sound. You are teaching your biology a new story, a narrative not of perfection, but participation. Science now confirms what sages, poets, and shamans have whispered for centuries. Belief is biology's first responder. Words are not metaphors for healing. They are healing when embodied in tone, rhythm, and trust. In every phrase we utter to ourselves, to patients, to loved ones, we are scripting cellular futures. Speak carefully, believe kindly, breathe truth. The body is listening. This is one of the most essential explorations in the whole arc, because here language returns to its origin, not in the mouth or the mind, but in flesh. Before the tongue, there was trembling. Before the sentence, there was sensation. The body spoke long before we did, and even now, beneath every word we utter, it keeps speaking still. In this part, we'll walk through the somatic lexicon, how posture, gesture, tone, breath, and sensation form a parallel syntax that both precedes and co-authors speech. We'll integrate interoception, polyvagal theory, and the principles of MLH, mirror linguistic hypothesis, and NSL nervous system language, exploring how our inner states both mirror and shape expression. We'll also weave in reflection, lived insight, and practice, because to understand the body's language isn't an abstract skill. It's a listening, a kind of dialogue with the unseen parts of ourselves that have been waiting, sometimes decades, to be heard. The body's language and somatic syntax. Every language begins in the body. Long before a child forms a word, they gesture, reach, cry, and grimace. These are not pre-linguistic noises. They are language, fluent and precise within the relational field. The body as lexicon, even as adults, we continue this embodied dialogue, though often unconsciously. A tilted head, a sigh, a folded arm, averted eyes, each is a sentence of sensation. Linguist David McNeill, who studied gesture and cognition, found that hand movements often precede speech, revealing thought before articulation. We don't just move to accompany words, we move into them. The body is not mute. It is multilingual. Each posture, each breath is a word in the somatic lexicon. Shoulders raised, I'm guarding. Spine upright, present, eyes softened, equals I trust. Chest expanded, equals I belong. Language then is not built to top the body. It emerges from it. To heal through words, we must return to their first grammar, the grammar of sensation, interoception, hearing the inner voice. If exteroception is the sense of the outer world, interoception is the sense of the inner one, the awareness of heartbeat, breath, hunger, tension, temperature, and emotion. Research from neuroscientist Bud Craig, 2002, Nature Reviews Neuroscience, identified the anterior insula as the cortical hub of interoception, a structure linking bodily states to emotional awareness. In practical terms, interoception is the translation layer between physiology and feeling. Without it, emotions become static, stuck in the body, unnamed and unprocessed. Studies show that individuals with high interoceptive accuracy display better emotional regulation and resilience. Naming what is felt helps the nervous system reorganize. As psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett notes, to name it is to tame it. When we label a sensation, tight, tingling, hollow, fluttering, we are not merely describing, we are mapping. The act of naming recruits prefrontal regulation, calming limbic storms. Healing begins when sensation becomes story. But there's nuance. Naming is not overriding. We don't rush to classify, we curiously translate. What are you saying, ache in my throat? What message hides beneath this flutter? In this light, symptoms are metaphoric utterances, the body's poetry asking to be read. Emotional granularity. Expanding the somatic vocabulary to heal is not merely to feel, but to differentiate feeling. The concept of emotional granularity, coined by Barrett, refers to the ability to distinguish subtle emotional states. Instead of bad, we can say uneasy, melancholic, grieved, or apprehensive. Instead of good, we might name grateful, peaceful, energized, or content. Each new word expands regulatory capacity. Like increasing shades in a painter's palette, granularity refines response. Similarly, in somatic literacy, expanding vocabulary transforms survival patterns. I'm anxious becomes I feel a quickening in my chest. I'm angry becomes there's heat in my hands, a need to move. This shift from concept to contact engages the nervous system language, NSL language attuned to bodily rhythm, where cognitive language judges, somatic language witnesses. This is compassionate syntax, grammar that mirrors rather than suppresses. The polyvagal grammar, syntax of safety. Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory provides the nervous system blueprint for communication. It teaches that safety is the foundation of connection, and that every vocal tone, gaze, and gesture broadcasts our internal state. Ventral vagal tone, calm engagement, to open face, melodic voice, steady breath. Sympathetic arousal, mobilization, to clipped speech, scanning eyes, shallow breath. Dorsal shutdown, immobilization, to monotone voice, downcast gaze, collapsed posture. We don't merely speak about emotions, we speak through them. A regulated body produces prosody, a voice rich in rhythm and variation. That's why a kind tone can soothe even in disagreement, and why flat or sharp tones can wound even with kind words. In this sense, polyvagal theory is grammar for the unspoken. It shows how physiology is syntax and tone is tense. When we embody NSL, slowing breath, softening voice, aligning gaze, we compose sentences of safety. Mirror linguistic hypothesis, speech mirrors state under the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH. Language reflects physiology. Words are mirrors of the nervous system's current configuration. When we're tense, speech shortens. When relaxed, it elongates. When afraid, it trembles. When grounded, it resonates. Thus, to change our state, we can change our speech and vice versa. Rapid fire talk, pause between phrases. Harsh tone, introduce warmth through a slower cadence. Shallow breath, elongate vowels. MLH suggests words carry energetic signatures. The micromodulations of tone, rhythm, and emphasis act as social biofeedback. To heal through language, then, is to mirror equilibrium, speaking from and to the body's natural coherence. Every phrase can be a pulse of regulation. Nervous system language, speech shape state, if MLH reflects, NSL shapes. Nervous system language teaches that speech is not only descriptive but directive. Each word cues an autonomic response. Whispering safe while breathing slowly engages ventral pathways. Repeating I can at a steady rhythm increases perceived agency. Saying I forgive you aloud recruits prefrontal empathy networks, softening defensive reactivity. NSL is not affirmation for the mind but entrainment for the body. When used consciously, phrases become somatic scripts, linguistic movements that restore coherence. The key is congruence. The voice must align with physiology. You cannot fake safety, you must breathe it. Listening to the body's micro movements. Most of us ignore the micro gestures that reveal our state, the subtle shift of weight before the decision, the twitch of the jaw before a boundary, the micro glance away before confession. These are pre-verbal sentences, tremors of truth. To practice somatic fluency, begin by observing them without correction. Each twitch, tremor, and tilt is a word in your internal dialogue. Ask, what are you saying, body? What are you asking for that words can't yet hold? When we bring curiosity rather than control, the body begins to trust its own voice again. Suppressed gestures become fluent. Frozen expressions thaw into movement. This is how trauma becomes language again, through attention, not analysis. Personal reflection. I've learned that the body often speaks before the mouth knows what to say. In moments of tension, I used to rush to rationalize, to understand why I felt unsettled. But over time, through silence, through mindfulness, through writing the body knows, I began to realize the explanation always came after the sensation. My body wasn't waiting for my intellect. It was waiting for my listening. When I finally began to track micro movements, the flutter of my diaphragm before a truth, the tightening in my shoulders before a yes that wanted to be no, I started to translate what had once felt ineffable. It wasn't about perfection, it was about partnership. My words became gentler once my body felt heard. The most fluent language I've ever learned wasn't Latin or linguistics, it was the grammar of my own pulse. Reflection prompt. What is your body saying before words arrive? Today, rather than journaling thoughts, journal sensations. Where is there warmth, tightness, pressure, lightness? Which parts feel open, which guarded? If each sensation were a voice, what would it whisper? Then write a reply, not in critique, but in kind response. I hear you ache in my chest. You're asking for breath. I see you, restless legs. You're craving movement. This is dialogue, not diagnosis. Activity, somatic journaling, conversing in kindness 1. Settle, sit or lie down. Take 3 slow breaths. Feel the ground. 2. Scan, move awareness from the crown to the solar plexus. Note sensations without judgment. 3. Select, choose one area that calls attention. Place a hand there. 4. Describe, in writing, describe the sensation as if it were weather, swirling, dense, humming. 5. Respond, write a kind sentence back. Not advice, compassion. I'm here with you. Thank you for speaking. Over time, this builds somatic literacy, a bilingual fluency between body and mind. When practiced regularly, you'll notice speech softening, tone grounding, pace aligning, and the nervous system integrating its own syntax. To heal is to restore conversation, not just between people, but between parts. The body does not need translation, it needs attention. Every heartbeat is a word, every breath a phrase, every tremor a truth. When we learn to listen, the silence becomes speech. When we learn to answer kindly, the body becomes home. The lexicon was never lost. It was living beneath the noise, waiting for you to remember. Integration. Language as wholeness integrity is when the word in your mouth sings in tune with the beat of your heart. Healing in its truest sense is not the removal of pain or the conquest of illness. It is integration, the reuniting of parts that had been separated by fear, shame, or silence. And nowhere is that integration more visible than in language. When a person heals, their speech changes. Not just vocabulary, but rhythm, tone, honesty, and restraint. They begin to speak from the center rather than the wound. The tongue becomes a compass pointing toward coherence. The voice of a tuning fork, vibrating in resonance with purpose. From parts to pattern, in the early stages of healing, we often meet fragmentation. We speak one thing and feel another. We say I'm fine while our body trembles. We promise I'll change while our habits cling. This fragmentation is not failure, it's the echo of survival. Trauma, shame, and social conditioning teach us to split language from lived truth, to speak the expected, not the experienced. Integration is the gradual weaving of these sundered threads back into one pattern, where thought, speech, and action form a single cloth. It is the end of double-speak within the self. Healing is linguistic coherence, saying what you mean, meaning what you say, acting as you speak. When language, body, and intention align, the nervous system registers safety. There's no inner contradiction to defend against. The words we utter no longer fracture us, they unify. This is the grammar of wholeness, every phrase a reflection of inner agreement. Coherence. The architecture of integrity coherence is more than consistency. It's resonance, when multiple elements move in sympathetic vibration. In neurocardiology, studies by the HeartMath Institute, McCraty 2015, show that when the heart and brain rhythms synchronize, emotional stability, clarity, and empathy increase. Language mirrors this principle. When your words align with your values, your body entrains to the truth. When you speak one thing and live another, dissonance sets in, the subtle static of incoherence. Every lie, even a small one, fractures wholeness. Every truth, even a tremulous one, mends it. This is why ancient traditions equated word with power. To speak falsely was to distort reality. To speak truly was to create harmony. Healing, then, is not only a medical process, it's moral musical, attuning one's speech to one's essence. Echoes across traditions, the sacred word across civilizations, the connection between language and life force was revered. Logos Greek, not merely word, but reason, pattern, divine order. To speak in logos was to mirror the cosmos. Vak, Vedic, the goddess of speech, creative vibration that births the world. In Sanskrit thought, speech purified through truth, Satya, sustains Dharma cosmic balance. Ruach, Hebrew, breath, spirit, and wind, the animating force that moves through all words. Mat, Egyptian, truth and balance, measured by the feather and the tongue. Heka, Egyptian, magic through utterance, to speak rightly was to heal reality. Each tradition recognized that language shapes existence, not metaphorically, but materially. When you speak with coherence, you are not merely narrating, you are conducting resonance. You align the microcosm of your body with the macrocosm of order. Healing as linguistic coherence. There is a subtle but profound shift when a person begins to heal. Their vocabulary softens, defensiveness becomes discernment, certainty makes room for curiosity. Words of blame give way to words of boundary. I can't believe you did that transforms into, that didn't feel safe for me. The tone slows, breath deepens, and pauses return. Conversations become spaces of regulation, not battlefields of reaction. This is linguistic coherence in action, communication as calibration. The healed voice doesn't seek to win, it seeks to align. Your voice is a tuning fork. Each voice carries a frequency, not metaphorically, but physically. Your vocal tone reveals the state of your vagus nerve, the depth of your breath, and the presence of your awareness. When you speak truth with calm conviction, your voice becomes a tuning fork, entraining coherence in others. This is why a single phrase, I see you, I believe you, you're safe now, can change physiology. Safety travels through resonance. In sacred chanting traditions, sound itself was seen as medicine. In modern therapy, prosody, melodic variation in speech, is a key marker of regulation. You are always composing music with your mouth. The question is, does your melody mirror your meaning? To heal through voice is to ensure your tone and truth vibrate together. Integration through practice. Integration isn't achieved in one revelation. It's cultivated through linguistic hygiene, daily rituals of awareness and alignment. Try these micro practices. Pause before speaking. Ask, is this true, kind, necessary, and aligned? Breathe between phrases. Let breath weave word and presence. Mirror check. After a conversation, notice, did my tone match my truth? Repair. If your words broke coherence, apologize, not for feeling, but for form. Each moment of mindful speech rewires not just the mind, but the moral musical architecture of being. Personal reflection. There was a time when my speech raced ahead of me, when I used words as shields, not signals, when eloquence masked uncertainty and articulation concealed ache, but healing slowed my tongue. It taught me that silence can be more fluent than defense, that honesty need not roar to be strong. I began to notice when my words landed true, the quiet click of coherence. My body relaxed, my breath steadied. The echo felt clean. Now I hear the music in meaning. I sense when a phrase vibrates off key. I rewrite, rephrase, reattune not to perform, but to belong within my own voice. Language became less a tool of persuasion, more a temple of presence. Reflection prompt. How has your vocabulary changed through healing? Consider words you've retired, those rooted in fear, scarcity, or shame. Notice new ones you've adopted, rooted in curiosity, truth, and grace. Ask yourself, which phrases no longer fit who I'm becoming? Which new words feel like home? How does my voice feel when I speak from love, not lack? Write them down. Observe the shift in tone, rhythm, and breath. Language evolves as we do. Activity. Compose a healing creed. A healing creed is a linguistic anchor, a brief personal declaration of coherence. It distills truth into sentences you can return to when dissonance arises. Instructions. 1. Reflect on your journey. What truths now guide you? 2. Write 7 sentences beginning with I honor, I trust, or I choose. 3. Read them aloud, slowly. Notice your physiology. Adjust until each line feels true. Example 1. I honor my body's pace. 2. I speak only what my breath can carry. 3. I choose curiosity over certainty. 4. I forgive myself for the words I spoke in fear. 5. I trust silence as much as speech. 6. I align tone with truth. 7. I live as one whole sentence, unfinished, evolving, alive. Keep this creed where you can see it. Revisit when your voice falters. It is your compass back to coherence. Integration is not perfection. It is harmony amid humanness. To be whole is not to be unbroken, but to be aligned. Your body, mind, and voice are not separate instruments. They are a single symphony. And healing is not the end of the song, but the moment you recognize its melody. Wholeness is when the mouth, the heart, and the hand all speak the same word. As we draw this episode to a close, I want to bring us back to the simplest question, one that might sound poetic at first, but is deeply physiological, deeply human. Which words have become medicine and which remain poison? It's a question I've asked myself at multiple points in my journey, not because I sought to divide language into good or bad, but because I noticed how certain phrases, even subtle ones, either soothed my nervous system or sent it spiraling. Words are chemistry. They don't just pass through the mind, they enter the bloodstream through meaning, memory, and tone. A harsh inner sentence can constrict breath before you've even realized what you've said to yourself. A kind phrase can release the jaw, lower the shoulders, and let oxygen move again. Over time, I've learned that healing isn't simply about what we say, it's about how our bodies hear us. So I invite you to begin listening for resonance, not rhetoric. Notice which sentences bring you home and which pull you back into the battlefield. A useful practice is to treat language as a pharmacopoeia, a living medicine cabinet. Each word, each sentence is a potential dose. Some restore equilibrium, others agitate the system. The more conscious you become of this, the more precise your prescriptions can be. Let's explore this through 3 layers. 1. Inner dialogue as prescription. The first and most consistent voice you hear is your own. It's easy to underestimate how often self-talk shapes physiology. Phrases like I can't handle this or I always mess up are not just pessimistic. They're linguistic triggers that reinforce stress pathways. Try swapping I can't handle this for I'm learning how to handle this. Notice the difference, not only cognitively, but somatically. The first closes the chest, tightens the gut. The second opens space, even slightly. It shifts the body into curiosity instead of collapse. The act of reframing here isn't denial, it's dosage. You're not lying to yourself. You're changing the tone of your treatment. When you become aware of this pharmacology of phrases, you realize every thought is a tincture, every word a capsule of chemistry. 2. External voices and the nervous system healing isn't just about your own words. It's also about recognizing how other people's language enters your body. Think of the difference between being told, you'll get through this, versus, you need to toughen up. Both are attempts at motivation, but one meets your system with co-regulation. The other provokes defense. Throughout history, shamans, priests, poets, and healers have understood this. Their role wasn't simply to deliver information, but to modulate vibration. The voice itself carried intention. The medicine was often in the tone. Even now, in therapy, coaching, or casual conversation, tone functions as emotional syntax. A kind sentence spoken coldly can lose its potency. A simple I'm here, whispered with warmth, can carry more power than an entire lecture on coping. So part of your ongoing healing practice is discernment. Whose words regulate your breath? Whose words constrict your lungs? And how can you learn to filter, digest, or refuse what doesn't serve your system? Cultural and collective scripts. Finally, there's the wider linguistic environment, the cultural spells we live within. Many of us inherit collective mantras: time is money, push through, no pain, no gain. These phrases, repeated for decades, can become unconscious operating systems, yet healing requires us to deprogram. We begin to ask, what cultural mantras are embedded in my nervous system? Which slogans have become my silent supervisors? What language might I retire, and what might I write in its place? This is where language reclamation begins, not as an academic exercise, but as a somatic liberation. You're not simply editing a sentence, you're shifting a frequency that has lived in your fascia. Integration prompt. For 1 week, try this. Keep a healing phrase journal. Each day, note 3 phrases that bring calm and 3 that trigger stress. They might come from your own self-talk, from others, or from the media you consume. Then track the physiological shift. Do your shoulders relax when you hear "I've got time"? Does your jaw tighten when someone says, "You're running late again"? Does your breathing deepen when you whisper, "I'm safe"? Language doesn't just describe your state, it directs it. By tracking your responses, you'll begin to identify your body's unique lexicon of healing. Activity. Build your pharmacopoeia of phrases now. Create your own pharmacopoeia of phrases, your personal medicine shelf of language. 1. Write down 10 words or sentences that consistently restore calm, clarity, or courage. 2. Next to each, note why it works. Is it the rhythm, the association, the tone, the memory it evokes? 3. Keep this list somewhere visible, perhaps on your phone's lock screen, mirror, or journal. Use it as an antidote when stress spikes. Read one line aloud. Watch your breath change. Let the sentence dissolve into sensation. You're not trying to control your state. You're reminding your body that it already knows safety. Words are the bridge, but the nervous system is the destination. We began this episode asking a simple question. Can words mend flesh and spirit? By now, the answer should feel less like theory and more like experience, because you felt it in the slow phrase that softened your breath, the gentle reframe that invited your shoulders to drop, the whisper that reminded your cells they were safe. To heal language is to heal perception, and to heal perception is to heal life itself. Every time you replace "I'm broken" with "I'm becoming," you shift the body's chemistry. Every time you choose truth over tension, your voice vibrates a little clearer. Every time you listen with compassion, you rewire the syntax of the soul. That is the work, not abstract, but embodied. Not decorative, but directive. Every word you speak is a small act of repair. So as you step back into your daily rhythm, let this awareness travel with you. Speak as though every cell is listening, because it is. Your language isn't just heard by others, it's metabolized by you. The body listens, the breath translates, the heart replies, and as you heal your speech, your world follows. Next time, we'll explore the most unexpected medicine of all, laughter. We'll enter episode 24, the language of play, jokes, puns, and nonsense. Together, we'll rediscover how humor destabilizes authority, frees the imagination, and returns joy to the tongue. Because sometimes the best cure for a heavy world is a lighter word. Thanks for joining me today. Remember to speak gently, breathe deeply, and the words you choose are the worlds you build within. Until next time, you've been listening to the Linguaverse. I'm James Miller.